students, my name is Chaitanya, Physics faculty at Shakthi International Schools. In this video, we are going to discuss about an important topic of motion in a straight line, that is, motion under gravity. Now, under this motion under gravity, we are specifically concentrating on object falling freely and object projected upwards. Now, object falling freely in this condition, we are going to consider an object which is at a particular height is being dropped. This object is being dropped. If an object is being dropped, we know the initial velocity we are giving it to it from our side will be 0. Now, it is going to move in downward direction. Why it is going to move in downward direction? Because there is a constant attraction force due to the earth is acting on it. We call it gravity. So there is an acceleration due to gravity that is acting on it. And we call that acceleration, we denote that acceleration with the letter G. And we have to talk about whether that acceleration due to gravity is going to be positive or negative. I am saying that that acceleration due to gravity will be negative because according to the convention that we are going to take, the initial position of the object is considered as your origin. Now, from here, if the analysis, if we have to do, if an object is going in upward direction, all the vector parameters of it, like velocity, acceleration, displacement, all of them will be considered to be positive. If it is in moving in downward direction, all the parameters such as velocity, acceleration, the displacement covered by it will be taken in negative. Now, why do we consider that the acceleration due to gravity is always acting in downward direction and is negative? Okay, because the gravitational force is actually acting always towards the center of the earth. That is the reason why acceleration due to gravity on an object, either it is moving in upward direction or in downward direction, will be considered to be negative. If acceleration of the object is in upward direction, then we can consider it to be positive. If it is in downward direction, we have to consider it to be negative. Since this is always acting in the downward direction, acceleration due to gravity will always be considered to be negative. I hope you got that point. Next, an object is projected upwards. Now, if it is projected upwards, we have to throw it with an initial velocity u. If it is given some initial velocity, while going in upward direction, it lose its velocity, and while coming in downward direction, it is going to gain the velocity. Now, at the maximum height, let's suppose this has traveled a maximum height of h, max I denoted with. At this maximum height, the object has been stopped. That means the final velocity that you are going to get in the upward travel is going to be 0. Now, that will be the initial velocity for the second travel. Okay, so I am considering this, dividing this motion of the object into two halves. That is, one is in upward direction and the second one is in downward direction. Now, we know equations of motion. According to the equations of motion, v is equal to u plus at, s is equal to ut plus half at square, v square minus u square is equal to 2as, and we can use Ascent equation is equal to u plus a into n minus 1 by 2. These are the equations of motion that we have known. Now, using these equations along with the sign conventions, we can analyze what is the time taken by the object to reach the ground, or what is the height that the object have been traveling, what is the height that it has traveled, and in how much time that it is covering that height. All these parameters we can analyze. Let's say in this condition, let's say we are applying all these equations. We know the initial velocity in this condition is 0. The acceleration due to gravity acting on it is minus g. Let's say it is at a height of the building, and it is going to take some t time to reach the ground. Now, if you are applying these parameters in the first equation, you will be getting v should be equal to 0 minus gt. And as I told you, since the height is covered in downward direction, the displacement is negative. The velocity, since it is moving in downward direction, it is also considered to be negative. Now, if you are substituting this to be negative, you will be getting minus v is equal to minus gt. So negative signs cancels. We can analyze the time t that it is going to take to reach the ground is equal to v by g. This is one important equation that you can consider. Next, in the same way, we can apply the same equation to the second equation. Same conditions to the second equation. So in the second equation, s is equal to ut plus half at square. From this equation, you can write h, height that it is traveled, since the displacement is h, is equal to ut. Initial velocity is 0, so it will be 0 plus half gt square. Now, considering the sign convention, you have to substitute h to be negative and g to be negative. Now, these two negative signs cancel each other. When they are getting cancel each other, you are getting final equation of h is equal to half gt square. From this, you can find the time period of it will be 2h by g under root. So this is another form of equation. This is another form of equation that you can use to find the time period. It depends on what are the parameters given in the question. Under root 2h by g. Yeah. So now, this is about object traveling in downward direction. Now, in this condition, there might be another subcase in which object is projected in downward direction with an initial velocity u. Okay, if initial velocity is not 0, then use the same equation along with the same sign convention. You will be getting final velocity is equal to u minus gt. Okay, in the same way, displacement s is equal to ut minus half gt square. In the same way, v square minus u square is equal to 2gh. These are the equations that you will be getting if you are not considering the initial velocity to be 0. Now, if I am substituting in the third equation according to this condition, I can get another formula on this, that is v square minus u square is equal to 2gh. Now, why I am not substituting negative signs, since velocities are anyhow squared, you don't have to bother about negative sign. Acceleration due to gravity is negative, and height covered by it is also going to be negative in the downward motion. So those two negative signs cancel each other. So I'm not bothered about it right now in this equation. So v square minus u square is equal to 2as. If initial velocity is 0, v square can be written as 2gh. And the final velocity that it is going to attain when it is about to touch the ground is going to be under root 2gh. So I hope you can remember these three formulas in this important case. So the time period formula, the velocity formula, and the height formula, the height that it is going to cover. If we know the time it is taking to reach the ground, we can calculate what is the height it has traveled. If you know what is the height, then you can calculate what is the time taken by it to reach the ground. If you know the height, you can calculate the velocity also. Given if there is any other parameters, you can use the same equations to analyze it. Okay, I hope you understood this one clearly. Now we are going to discuss about object projected in upward direction. Now, if an object is projected in upward direction with an initial velocity, we know, since we have divided this into two different motions, that is upward motion and downward motion. Upward motion and Downward motion. In upward motion, the object is going with an initial velocity in upward direction, and slowly it is losing its velocity, and the final velocity of it is becoming 0. Let's say it might have traveled a height h max. Okay, it might have taken some time t to travel that height. We call that time to be time of ascent. Time of ascent is the time taken by the object to reach the maximum height. Now, if you are considering the downward motion of the particle, it is starting at the highest point with an initial velocity 0, because the object has stopped at that. The final velocity of upward motion will be the initial velocity of downward motion path. So acceleration due to gravity acting on both the conditions will be minus g. Now it is also traveling the same displacement, that is your h maximum. If we are analyzing this with the equations of motion, we know v is equal to u plus at, s is equal to ut plus half at square, and v square minus u square is equal to 2as. So applying these three equations again under this format, s is equal to ut plus half at square, v square minus u square is equal to 2as. If you are applying this equation, 0 should be equal to initial velocity is u minus gt of a. So you can write time of ascent is equal to u by g. In the same way, if you are substituting it in downward motion, you can write v is equal to u plus gt. Since the final velocity is going to be negative and initial velocity is 0 minus gt, you can get v is equal to gt. And we know time of descent can be written as v by g. Now you have to get a general idea of it. The time taken by the object to reach the maximum height and the time taken by the object to reach the ground from the maximum height should be same. Will be same if air resistance is considered to be neglected. If air resistance is neglected, then initial velocity is equal to the final velocity. We know this condition from time of ascent is equal to time of descent. Now you can take time of flight. Time of flight is a sum of time of ascent plus time of descent. If you are adding both u by g plus v by g, which we can write it as 2u by g. Okay, so time of flight of this object can be written as 2u by g. Time of flight is equal to 2u by g. Now this is the time of flight. In the same way, we can calculate what is the maximum height, h max. If I want to calculate h max, I am considering the final velocity at the top is 0. If the final velocity at the top is 0, then the distance traveled by it in a time of ascent time of ascent is equal to u by g. We can write s is equal to ut plus half at square. Either we can use this equation or we can use v square minus u square is equal to 2as. Always use an easiest approach. This is easy for us since we already know what is the initial and final velocities. Since we know the final velocity is going to be 0 in this equation and the initial velocity is u square, we can write this one as 2 into acceleration due to gravity is minus g and the height covered by it will be positive. So two negative signs cancel. U square is equal to 2gh, and h can be written as, h max can be written as u square by 2g. So these are the special conditions. These are the important formulas that you have to remember in this condition. Now some important points on this if you have to analyze. We have seen two important motions, that is object moving in upward direction, object moving in downward direction. I hope you understood these two topics. Now we will see some important points on this. Now, what are those important points? When an object is projected in upward direction, it is going to follow this projectile path. Now, at any point of time, if you are trying to analyze the velocities at any point of time, irrespective of the direction of motion, whether they are going in upward direction or in downward direction, at the same height, the velocities will be same. Whatever the velocity that you will be having at this particular height h1, will be the same velocity that you will be having at this height h2. At the same height h1 and h1, the velocity here will be, if you are considering it as u2, u1 will always be u2 irrespective of direction of motion. Now, in this, they might ask you to find what is the distance traveled in nth second. Let's say if an object initial velocity is 10 meter per second, if it is thrown in upward direction, the maximum time that it is going to reach, the time it is going to reach the maximum height is going to be u by g. That means 1 second. This is your time of ascent. Now in this time, if you are trying to understand what is the maximum height, you can write it as u square by 2g, okay, which is 100 divided by 2 into 10, which is going to be 5. 5 meters is the maximum height that it is traveling. Let's say if I am asking you to find what is the distance traveled in nth second, okay, in the second. Now you know it is going to travel 1 second in upward direction and 1 second in downward direction. Now in the second it is going to again travel the h max distance, okay, h max displacement or distance. Since it is a straight line motion, we are considering both to be same. So ascent is equal to u plus a into n minus 1 by 2. So for this one, if you are considering the total velocity, the initial velocity is 10 and the acceleration due to gravity is also 10 into n. In the second we are asking 2 minus 1 by 2 will be given as 10 minus 10 into 1.5, which will be giving 10 minus 15, which will be giving me minus 5 meters. Minus 5 meters is the displacement traveled by the object in the second. Why we are getting negative? That means the object is traveling in the negative downward direction. Hope you guys have understood this concept. Thank you.